Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special 50th episode of Non Sequitur Nerds. We managed to keep doing this for this long. Tonight, we're going to be talking the Final Fantasy series in general. But as always, I'm Tim, joined by my buddy Ian. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, dear God, I am so tired.
Dude, yeah, no, I hear it. I hear you.
This week has been hell on wheels. We're doing hiring at work, and I'm the hiring manager, so I'm doing interviews.
You guys do
And
work from home, remote work, right?
yes,
Just
yes.
just throwing that out there,
Yeah, no, we are, yeah. So it's been a busy week, and then I had several impromptu meetings, and I had to go into the office a couple times this week, and
Yeah.
I feel kind of like do you remember back in of course you remember back in Trigun,
Mhm.
the where Vash is like dodging the bullets
Okay. Yes.
constantly. That's
Yes.
how I feel with COVID right now. It's just like
Dude.
I'm in a perpetual state of how I can contort my life to avoid getting the plague. I have
Dude, I
managed
hear
two
you.
and a half years without catching anything. I was in the office 2 weeks ago and around two people that had it
Oh my
and managed to
god.
avoid getting it. And now I'm just like, I'm so tired.
Dude, I hear you. We have in the factory industry right now, it's horrible. Like everybody is like just passing it around left and right now. And I mean, I've been lucky enough to same thing just be dodging it, but I luckily like with my position, I'm not really around many people. I'm usually around like if I am around people, I'm around like the same two people.
Right,
So I just got to make sure that they don't have it. So
right.
but it's crazy right now, dude. It's this isn't 2022. This is 2022. I mean,
Right.
just like as a quick aside before we get started, this year so far, we've lost a lot of greats already this year. I mean, to date this episode, Meatloaf passed away. We had Bob Saget before that. We had Betty White before
Louis
that.
Anderson passed away today too.
Yeah, Louis Anderson. I forgot about Louis. We've lost.
So this seems to be the confirmation that Louis Anderson and Meatloaf are actually the same person.
I was gonna say, cause didn't they? Did they died on the same day? Didn't they?
Yeah, they both passed away on the same day,
Oh my gosh.
like within hours of each other.
My gosh.
Yeah. So,
Craziness.
uh, yeah, and there've been others that have been like less high profile, but
Yeah.
have definitely been out there. So it's
Like I know Moon Knight, which is one of Marvel's next shows coming up, one of their leads in that passed away as well. I unfortunately I apologize. I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head. Not super
uh,
familiar with any of their work. But I mean the show's not even out yet, and they've already lost a lead, which I mean is definitely sad for I mean for the cast, the crew, the friends, the family of that actor. Um,
right,
but yeah, this year's yeah. But hey, we made it to 50 episodes. Um,
right.
we got
So there's a
that.
little bit of we got something going for us, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway,
So
we're here tonight to talk Final Fantasy, a series that I know Ian and I are both quite avid fans of. I imagine a lot of our listeners are as well. It's one of those game series that I've met people who didn't like a particular entry, but I've never met anybody who just doesn't like Final Fantasy, at least one of the games.
well, let's admit. Yeah, Final Fantasy is definitely one of those seminal works in video game history, in video game news. I mean, it's spawned hundreds of copies, lookalikes, a genre in and
Yep.
of itself.
Oh, absolutely.
And going back and looking at the history, it's a fairly well known fact why it's called Final Fantasy. At
Yep.
least in the gaming community, it
Right.
was called Final Fantasy because the original publisher, Square, and that was back when they were SquareSoft, was struggling. Like
Yeah.
they were struggling
Pretty hard. Pretty
financially. Like,
hard.
yeah, I mean they hadn't come out with any kind of like major hits or anything like that, and they thought that they were going to go under. So they literally thought it was their last game. So they called it the Final Fantasy. So it was a commercial success. I mean, it
Yeah.
obviously because we have 15 Final Fantasies right now, not including spin-off sequels, other games within, side games, um,
Movies, yeah, see, card games even,
card games. They've had
manga. I mean, it's,
2.5 MMOs. Um,
oh well, yeah, yeah. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
so yeah, so I mean, they had 11.
Hmm.
And then they had 14, and then they rebooted 14. So
Yep.
that's why I'm saying it's an MMO and a half.
MMO.
It's
There you go.
1.5.
Well, we'll count it. We'll count it. But I mean, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a series that I mean has spanned beyond the scope of just being a video game, like we said. And I know we've kind of touched on it here and there. But I mean, like again, there's been movies, card games, manga, merchandise. Um, it's just it is a gaming behemoth is really the only
Yep.
way to describe it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's been a fantastic series. Obviously, it was one of the kind of set the groundwork. Not, I shouldn't say groundwork, but it is one of the first majorly successful turn-based combat games. So everything was numbers based. It wasn't just hack and slash.
Yep.
Like Zelda, Pitfall or any of those. I mean, Pitfall wasn't really a hack and slash, but
Right.
it was a platformer. But it wasn't a platformer. It wasn't a hack and slash game. Like almost a strategy game.
Right.
It was a numbers game. So it was one of the most successful, obviously, because it's still around.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic, whole plethora of games, and it's
Absolutely.
spawned some of the most iconic characters in gaming
Oh
history,
God,
in
yes.
media history. It was so popular that the Italian Senate even wanted to feature some of the some of the characters during one of
Yeah.
their sessions.
Yeah. To standing ovation, I'm sure.
Something was standing.
I still like. I need to look at like. I knew that was a thing that happened. I need to look into the actual story to see what happened. I mean, do you know what actually happened?
I really don't. I've only caught like bits and pieces of it. Basically, for those of you out of the know, you're welcome to go look up more of the details. The short version, too long didn't read version, is during a meeting of the Italian Senate this past week. I guess there was a presentation shown, and instead of the presentation, it was porn from Final Fantasy VII, specifically featuring Tifa.
That's. I mean, I'll give the Italian Senate this. They know how to get stuff done. That got everybody's
Yeah,
attention
I mean,
right
she
there.
was on
I mean,
cloud nine.
I'm giving you an air horn for that one, Ian.
Yes, but anyway, yeah, so iconic characters. I mean, obviously you have the some of the aesthetic components of the games that have continued on the main concepts of the use of crystals. I mean, crystals are featured heavily throughout all of the games.
Very much
Warriors
so.
of Light is very much a concept that continues on through all of the games. The main characters, and you see, some of the kind of the main types, the main archetypes in those. You had your warrior, you had your white mage, you had your red mage, you had your black mage, and then the job system that went along with it.
Yep. Which I mean
Being able to,
especially in like their most recent online entry of Final Fantasy 14, the award-winning MMO from Square Enix. Um, you can't say it without mentioning that little part. Like the
right.
job system is obviously very heavily prevalent there. Um, I mean, pretty much all those key points you mentioned are main points of that game. The Warriors of Light, crystals, job systems, things like that. Even the auxiliary stuff like chocobos, mogs, things of that type. I mean,
Kupo.
yeah, Kupo. I mean, like those, like even those two, they have been staples in every single Final Fantasy game. I mean, do you remember the? I don't remember which one it was for the Super Nintendo, but the ads, the print ads here for, and even actually the commercials. Now that I think about it, had a Moogle with like a very like an obscenely surly voice, like talking smack about other games, hyping up Final Fantasy. Do you remember those commercials?
That was a long time ago, but
Yeah,
I
I know it
kind of
was.
remember it.
I don't remember what the voice sounded like. I just remember it was a very surly voice. Like I don't think it was Danny DeVito, but if it wasn't, it should have been because in my head it's Danny DeVito. Um, but I mean, yeah, Final Fantasy has been a series that they could literally not advertise that a new game was coming out and just say, "Hey, new game's coming out next month," and it would still sell and break records.
Right.
Like, I mean, record. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily numbers sold, dollars sold, whatever have you, but people would take notice even with no advertising. I mean,
Oh,
advertising is not going to hurt the game, but I mean, honestly, they would still sell a crap ton just on word of mouth.
right. And if you look I mean, they're now Square Enix. They merged with Enix software years ago, so it's
It's
Square
been a
Enix
long
now.
time now.
Yeah, it's been a long time. They've purchased several other big name studios. Crystal Dynamics. They've got um,
They own
Eidos,
Eidos, don't they? Yeah.
Eidos,
Yep.
Eidos, who made the original makers of the Tomb Raider games. And let's admit,
Hitman, I
Square's.
think.
Yeah, I think so too. Or was that Ubisoft? No, it might have been Eidos.
I
I
think
don't
it was
remember.
Eidos.
And let's admit that the other entries into the Tomb Raider games were fantastic. The
Oh yeah.
reboots, especially. I
Especially
mean, it
yeah,
was
the
such
reboots
a
were really good.
yeah. Um, so yeah. I mean, they've definitely have done very well for themselves, and they continue to do well for themselves,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
especially with the big surge and push to go to Final Fantasy 14. Um, you know,
Yeah.
there's let's just go ahead and clear the elephant in the room. I mean, Activision Blizzard's been running into afoul of a lot of issues lately.
I mean, other than
Um,
just inheriting, $70 billion.
I mean, that's the shareholders inheriting that, and
Exactly.
then
Let's hope that. I know we can save this for later down the road, but I hope that with the Microsoft acquisition of them, that they're able to turn that company around. Because I mean, I'll be honest, like Activision, I mean they've had some games that I enjoyed, but Blizzard had like when they were just Blizzard had a lot of games that I really
I mean,
loved. I really hope
right.
that
And if you look at
Microsoft's able to
them,
turn that division around.
yeah, I mean, if you look at Blizzard, their IP list isn't really all that even big. I mean, it's
Yeah,
Diablo, StarCraft, Warcraft,
yeah.
like,
I
and
mean,
then now and Overwatch.
yeah,
I mean, those are their mainline games, right?
yep.
It's then they, but anyway, yeah. So not to non sequitur too much here.
Ah,
Um, uh,
he said the
uh,
thing.
yeah, I said the thing. Anyway, so um, Square's Final Fantasy games, like I said, have been quintessential in nerd history and nerddom and fandom. And it's very hard to find anybody, like you said, that doesn't at least have one entry in the Final Fantasy series that they like.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, unless you're somebody that like only plays sports games or Call of Duty,
Yeah.
in which case,
I mean,
whatever.
if RPGs in general you don't like, I'll give you a pass on not liking Final Fantasy. But if you have
Mhm.
enjoyed any RPG, I challenge you to be honestly look me straight in the face and tell me that you don't like a single Final Fantasy game.
Tactics, Final Fantasy
Oh,
Tactics.
dude,
I mean,
Tactics was brilliant.
yeah.
I mean, Tactics Advance, when they brought that, I played the crap out of that. Well, I mean,
Oh
and
yeah.
even like kind of offshoot games that Square has done. Chrono Trigger, one of my all-time favorite games, not a Final Fantasy game, but very classic Final Fantasy inspired. I mean, they Square kind of, especially with the classic games, they kind of hit the nail on the head with what makes a good RPG that has longevity. I mean, there's people to this day that will still boot up the original Final Fantasy just to
Right.
replay it for fun. They may have beaten it countless times, but they'll still boot it up and play it just for fun. Um, well, I mean, and Square, I know one of your personal favorite games, Mario RPG.
Oh
Square
God.
Square made that.
Yep. Super
I mean,
Mario
and again,
RPG.
very it was. I kind of consider that proto Kingdom Hearts because that was their first foray into taking another established IP and giving it that Square Enix touch, and
Right. And
they nailed it.
now we have Paper Mario, which is okay,
Yeah, the
but
Paper Mario they're
it
good.
doesn't
They're
have
not Mario
it.
RPG though.
Yeah. Yeah. which is sad because Mario RPG is. I mean, I have hundreds of hours in that game. In
Right.
that game, multiple replays and things like that. But, um, yeah. So they they really defined a kind of a genre, and then they've had other entries, and they've evolved the formula as things have gone on. I mean, every mainline Final Fantasy game up through and including 10 was a turn-based game, kind of a skill-based system and
Yeah.
whatnot. And then they started getting into the more real-time combat systems that they had, which was really derisive when it
Yeah.
happened
Well, I
and
mean,
divisive when it happened.
11. Well, 11 was kind of a huge turning point for them because not only did they go to a more gearing towards real time because it wasn't fully real time combat, not in the way that like 15 as an example is, but it was more. It wasn't as turn based, and it was their first online game. And I know like a
Right.
lot of people were really torn on that because they're like, oh, it's a Final Fantasy, but you have to play with other people. Well, I mean, that sounds cool because you can share the experience with your friends. I don't know how it's going to go. It must be doing pretty good because 11 is the servers are still up for it. You can still buy and boot up 11 and still play it online, even though they have
Well,
14 out. I mean, admittedly, the player
let
base
let's
isn't
ad-
as big.
let's also admit this as well. There are, I mean, is so long as there's kind of an interest and there's a reason to keep it around and make some money, companies will keep them around.
Yeah.
EverQuest is still online.
Yeah, like
Eve is still around.
okay,
I,
admittedly,
I
I know some people that play Eve exclusively. That's all they do is they micromanage their corporation on Eve, and it's like I don't have the attention span to do that.
well, we all know that. That's
Yes,
for
I
sure. Um,
shiny what? Sorry.
but anyway, so yeah, it's one of those again it continues to be just groundbreaking in everything that they do, and
Oh,
they have
absolutely.
such well crafted stories. um you know Probably I think my first real introduction, so the first Sony product that I owned was a PlayStation 2.
Okay.
So my first true introduction to a mainline Final Fantasy game was Final Fantasy X. I
Okay.
mean, from there, I also went and got 7 and 8, and I played a little bit of 9.
Right.
Um, but before that, I had played, I can't remember what it was called, but it was a Game Boy game. It was a Final
Okay.
Fantasy Game Boy game. Um, and it was a
My
lot of
brain.
fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't remember what it was called. But yeah, I mean, that one was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 10 was like my first real introduction to the series.
Okay.
So my first real introduction, I got the very first voice acted
Yeah, which which
Final
which is a
Fantasy game.
again another derisive change, but I think apart from a few like memeable quotes from that game, generally I think people really enjoyed the fact that you could actually hear your characters now, and you weren't the voiceless protagonist that it's kind of stereotypical of that genre. Um, I mean
Right.
even seven, which I know for a lot of people was their first introduction to it. Um, Cloud, while he did have some dialogue for the first part of the game, I mean, granted, like based on the story, you kind of get why he didn't really say a whole lot. You know,
Right.
I mean, even I know a lot, not always, but a lot of the older Final Fantasies, that's kind of how the character, your hero character was, is they didn't say a whole lot, but they kind of as the games went on, you got more into their character. With 10, Titus, I don't care how you say it, it's the same dude. Just
It's
he
Titus.
he doesn't shut up. But I
Right.
mean that was his personality though. He
Right.
was
I
he
mean,
wasn't your stereotypical, troubled hero, or stout warrior. He was a dude who played, space soccer. Um,
I think it was more space rugby.
yeah, I guess it is closer to rugby, but
Yeah, so I mean, if you look, and again, we kind of jump back and look at the characterizations in those games. If we look at 10, you have Titus, you've got my homeboy Aaron.
I
Um,
thought you were gonna say
no,
Waka at first.
no, big grouchy dude with a big ass sword. That's
That's
my
that's
archetype.
yeah, that is you.
Um, then you have Waka, the the
Waka Waka.
the token. annoying sidekick.
The Jar Jar
Um,
Binks of Final Fantasy.
yeah.
Except I
You
like
have
Waka.
he's okay in small doses.
Well,
Um,
I saw a meme the other day. It was evil being shows up literally powered by a god. Better throw a ball at him, and it's Waka just like sitting there with the blitz ball, like, and it
right,
works.
right. Then you've got big booby goth princess Lulu.
The original
Um,
Big Booby Goth Princess.
right. Um, Yuna, obviously one of the most recognized characters.
Oh yeah,
And then all Kimari, Riku. I think that's actually it for the mainline cast.
yeah, I
Am I
think so.
missing anyone? Yeah, no, I think that was it. Yeah, they had a pretty small, but I mean, that game was a good introduction. Then again, I obviously went back and played seven, and then uh, Square has done a fantastic job of re-releasing a lot of the older
Yes,
games.
yes they
Either
have.
I think they had the Pixel remaster recently. Did I
Yeah,
see that
which
came out? Which was
I
like
haven't
a
looked into it, but I'm curious about it.
I think it's just like it's like the original style of the games, except that it's been remastered and you can just play the originals just in a remastered format. So it's
Right,
like 16-bit games and whatnot.
right.
And they did a remake of six, I believe, right? Because you got to see Kafka in all of his douchey glory.
Oh, Kafka.
Um,
Like I think everything. Let's see. I know 1 through 7. Obviously, 7 got a full reboot. But like 1 through 6, I know I've gotten various re-releases throughout the year. 7 got the reboot. 8 got a re-release. 9 got a less glorious re-release. 10 got a re-release. I think 2 console generations ago, so back in the PS3 360 era, if I remember correctly. And it was also on
yeah.
handheld, so I remember I had it for my Vita. Um, 11, obviously nothing there. 12 even got a re-release not too long ago, actually, maybe in the last year or two. Um, 13 is kind of the black sheep of the family. I mean, it's there. There's people that are fans of it, but that's one of the Final Fantasies that I don't really care for. I couldn't relate to any of the characters. The conflict just wasn't interesting to me. Um,
It's on Game Pass now,
yeah,
so I might go back I might go and check it out.
right. Because I
And
know especially because they split that game into 3 parts, which was kind of, again, not a traditional thing to do with Final Fantasy. The first part, I know a lot of people didn't really care for it because Final Fantasy had always been about, these worlds you can explore, you can go around, you can travel. 13, at least the first part, was obscenely linear. And I know for
yeah.
a lot of people that was a big turnoff for Final Fantasy. The second part, I think, was still mostly linear, but it did open up more towards the end. And then the third one, they tried to kind of course correct, but I think by that point, people had already kind of been soured on it. So the third one, I don't think sold too well for them. Which is kind of the 13 in general was kind of the exception to the Final Fantasy rule. They really had to push to get people to buy that, and I think one of them came with a demo for some upcoming Final Fantasy game, and that was the only way to get the demo was to use the download code that was in the box. Um, but it was for a Final Fantasy game that I gotta remember. I think if I remember right, I think it originally released in Japan on some handheld, but never came to the states. But they were going to bring it to the states. Final Fantasy Type Zero, I think it was called.
I
I
think
mean,
I remember that
yeah,
one.
I mean, I played the demo. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't what I wanted out of a Final Fantasy. But I mean, there's people that really enjoyed it though. It wasn't bad. I never got around to playing it. So, but then of course, after 13, you had 14, which obviously is doing very well for itself right now. You had 15, which is the greatest dude bro road trip simulator you will ever play. I absolutely love 15. I thought it was fantastic. I loved all the changes they made to it. And we've got the upcoming Final Fantasy 16. I say upcoming as in hopefully within our lifetime. Um, but like that, they've put out I think just the one trailer for it, but that immediately had me hyped for it.
Well, yeah, because they're
I think
returning
that one
to
is
a
PlayStation exclusive if I remember right.
they are returning to a more traditional style with that, whereas Dude Bro Simulator was more like that was more techno punky. You know, they've been getting more and more technologically advanced, and Final
Right.
Fantasy has always been more of a steampunk style
Mhm.
at best.
Right.
You know, not really futuristic at all. You know, they have airships and that kind of stuff. I mean, Final Fantasy 15, you had a bloody car.
I mean,
Um,
you did. I mean, granted, you can get that a version of that car in 14, which is cool. But yeah, I
right.
mean, 15, like you literally had a car, and you could trick out your car too. Like I thought, like that was the most pointless addition to that game, but I absolutely love tricking out the regalia.
Yeah, so I feel like 16 will come out here soonish. Or soon enough, anyway.
I'm like,
Um,
part of me wants to hope that it'll be like late this year, but the other part of me is realistically thinking 2023, especially with everything going on. It's probably going to be delayed till next year if I had to guess. But I mean, that's still, it's in the grand scheme of things, a year's not too long when you're as old as we are.
right.
Um,
Right. Well, I mean, let's all admit another Square property took 8 years to get a sequel out. Final or Kingdom Hearts 3.
dude, yeah, that took quite a while. But I
Not to
enjoyed the
say
Kingdom Hearts series.
not to say they didn't put 16 other games
Oh
out
my god,
in between,
I was
but it was
trying to
just not
explain
a single one of them was a mainline game.
I was trying to explain Kingdom Hearts to somebody that had never played it before, and I'm like, all right, well, there's Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3. I mean, you play those, you got the main line. Like, what do you mean main line? There's like side stories. Like, yes, but they're in like 5 different games. Like, so do you have to play all of them? I said, well, yes and no. If you want the full story to make sense, then yes, absolutely play all of them, or at least look up a YouTube video. And then 3 came out. They realized it had been 500 years since anybody played number 2, and that game at the beginning pretty much gave you like, hey, here's the refresher course of everything you need to know to understand what the hell is going on.
Right.
Although I did think it was odd that when Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, there were excuse me, Square Enix characters all over that game. That was a big part of the game, is it was characters from Disney, characters from Square Enix in the same game. 3, the Square Enix characters were nowhere to be found. You didn't have the Coliseum battle with Sephiroth. You didn't see, Squall and all them in the hub town. They were just gone and they never addressed it.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even notice that when I was doing my playthrough. I think I was just so excited to actually like play the bloody game that I
Right?
didn't even register with me that they
Like
were missing.
it didn't detract from the game, but once you realize it, that's always in the back of your head that something's missing out of this game. And I
Right.
guess I never went back and played it again after the DLC came out, and I guess the DLC added some of that stuff in as like
Hmm.
optional side stuff. I don't know. I can't confirm that. That's what I heard. Again, this is what, 3 years ago now that game came out.
Yeah, I want
I
to say
think
it
so.
was pre-COVID.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was. But I won't,
Back before the Great Plague.
dude. Right. I don't want to spoil it on this particular episode, but the true ending of Kingdom Hearts 3 kind of alludes to some changes for that series.
Yeah.
But no, Square Enix and Final Fantasy in general, like, again, I've said this countless times. They hit the nail on the head. They know what they're doing. Anytime they make changes, for the most part, it's met with pretty positive response.
Yeah. I mean, if you take a look at Final Fantasy 14, their current MMO entry, the mainline MMO entry, they have, you know, they just released a new expansion, and it was so popular that they actually had to stop sales of the game
Yep.
because the servers were overloaded and
Yep.
people couldn't play. Tim being one of them.
Yep.
Um,
I actually, like, normally in that game, you can do a character transfer. You can transfer your character from one server to another. It's a paid service, but it's for, like, if your server's starting to get a little congested, or if you have friends that started playing on another server, you can transfer over there. They also stopped that. So
mhm.
I finally got fed up with being on a server that had queues of, at times, over 5,000. And that's 5,000 people waiting for somebody else to log off so that they could log in. We're talking hours upon hours of waiting to
I
even
mean,
play this
a
game.
queue of 5,000 is probably about a half day wait
At
to get
least,
in.
at least.
Right. And then, of
So
course, when it first came out, people were getting plagued by the 2002 errors that
Yeah,
would basically the server hit maximum memory
yeah. Like we
for the session queue hit maximum memory and would kick everyone out of queue.
Yep. So I decided to bite the bullet, say hell with it, and just make a new character on the server that guy's on. Which I think the highest queue time I've seen is like 90. That's it.
Yeah, I popped onto it a little bit before we started the broadcast, and I was at 58, and I was promptly logged in about 47 seconds.
That's about right. Like 30 to 50 is typically what I see. The 90, I think there it was like prime login time on a weekend. But even still, a queue of 90, you're talking enough time to go grab a pop and come back.
Right. Like, and then you come back and your character's standing there awkwardly, and you're like,
Right.
oh,
Oh, I'm in the game.
right.
So, but I
Yeah,
mean, so
so,
yeah, I mean, 14 is obviously doing pretty good for itself right now.
right.
Between that new expansion, between the and we've alluded to this before, the exodus of people leaving World of Warcraft to come here, the game is just it's booming. I mean, you will always find people on, you will always find something to do in that game,
Yep.
and there's a
Yep.
lot of stuff to do. As I'm discovering,
Yeah.
so I'm doing it all again. Um,
It's kind of like scary, really, like the amount of stuff that there is to do in
oh
this
God,
game,
yes.
because it's like ridiculously busy. Like there's so many dungeons.
Well, I mean,
So many
well,
dungeons.
for me right now, I mean, Ian and I, like, we've been obviously playing the game together since we're on the same server. When we do, it's him running me through dungeons to kind of get my character back up to level to where I need to be, since I started off at level 1 again. So he's getting to relive a lot of those low level dungeons,
Right.
which I mean, like, admittedly, I mean, like, even their low level, like, beginner, like, introductory dungeons, they're super simple to get through. The mechanics are pretty much non-existent, other than enemy kill it, enemy kill it, enemy kill it, fight the boss. But they're
Right.
still fun. Like the designs of all the dungeons.
The four button dungeon is
Yep.
what you call it, because
Yep.
you literally just need to use four buttons.
Oh, as a early level monk, you only need 3.
Ah, okay.
So
I mean, I've been running Tim through as a healer because
so that we can queue
you
up in
know
like 2 seconds. Um,
right.
but yeah, I
So
mean
I
it's definitely it is a fun time. I mean the like I know like there's been like a very well not a very vocal but a vocal minority that are like, oh, the biggest thing you need to do is update the graphics in this game. This game is it's outdated. I don't think graphics are going to make more people come to this game. The game's doing that just being as it is now. I mean, like
right.
just the design of the game, the aesthetics, the mechanics, I mean, dungeon layout, character customization, everything about it is like really good. I mean, as somebody who's already hooked into it, I'm happy with what I got. If they added like a new, like more character customization, that I cool. If they added, if they did update the graphics, okay, cool. I'm not going to be leaving this game anytime soon. I'm enjoying it.
You mean Bunny Boy wasn't a big enough update for you?
Okay, I mean, admittedly, when they put that out, that's what I rolled up when I got into this new server.
Rascal Dreams of Bunny Boy Senpai.
There we go.
Um, yeah.
Dude,
So
like I will say,
anyway,
all the money boys look like very tall 12-year-olds, though. Like even when
it's
you
kind
put
of
the
creepy.
facial hair on them, it looks like they took a Sharpie and drew it on real quick to go, I would like to see one rated R movie, please, sir. Are you
I would
three
like to buy
Lalafells in a
a
trench coat?
beer, please.
I mean, pretty much. That's so I'm like, yeah, no, I'm getting rid of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Final Fantasy has obviously been a huge name out there in the series, and
Oh
Square
God,
Enix
yes.
themselves have obviously been a tour de force of the world, holding some of the largest studios, some of the largest IPs out there, and some of the longest running series. I mean, if you go out and even look at their non-Final Fantasy games, they are absolutely huge. So, um, you know, we can't say enough about the influence that Final Fantasy has had on the world of gaming, and really anything that Square Enix has done.
So like,
If you're not a fan, I suggest if you never played a game, I guess I should say, give one a shot.
oh,
Try
absolutely.
it, try it out. And
What
if you
what what
have,
would
and
your
if you're not a
go-to be?
fan,
Like if somebody said, okay, I want to play Final Fantasy, what one should I play first? Because for those that, if you're listening to this and you haven't played a Final Fantasy, apart from like 13 or some of there's been a few other games with numbered sequels, like 10 had 10 too. The sequels aside, what mainline Final Fantasy would you pick as somebody's first?
I would probably honestly tell people in this day and age to start with 10
Okay.
because it still holds up fairly well graphically.
Yeah.
It still holds up mechanically, and the voiceover holds up as well, and it gives people some more immersion.
Okay.
So it gives them an interactive kind of experience into the platform. Now, obviously, you could try like the 7 remake.
Hmm.
But that one has been, I mean, it's entirely different than the original
Yeah, it is.
than the original 7. Like, I mean, it's even core to the story of the game is that it is different. So, um, I don't know that I would suggest they do that. While it is pretty and it is fun, there's an element that you almost need to have experienced the other game first.
Very, very valid point.
It's definitely a game that's geared more towards people that like played the original.
Oh yeah.
So I would have to say 10.
Okay.
Especially if you want a solo game. If you want if you want like a multiplayer game, their MMO then do 14,
Yeah.
obviously. But
Okay. Okay.
how about yourself?
See, personally, I would tell them to start off with 15. Mostly because that kind of gives them an indication of where the series is at currently, as far as mechanics, the way it plays, and everything like that. So they can kind of get a feel for what the future holds for that series. But then I would also recommend that if like, hey, if you prefer a more classic style RPG, go Final Fantasy VIII. Out of the classic ones, I don't dislike 7. I am very much a fan of 7. 8 is still my favorite though. I liked the characters, I liked the setting, I liked the way they did the magic in that game. I thoroughly enjoyed 8. Um, but yeah,
That's fine.
I would tell them to start off with 15. That way they kind of get an idea of the most recent take on it. Because I mean, obviously the series is it's probably not 16 probably isn't going to deviate too much from how they did 15. And even the 7 remake, you could definitely see shades of 15 in that and the way that the game handled. So I mean, obviously that's how the more modern Final Fantasies are going to be going forward. I imagine 16 will be pretty similar, a few tweaks here and there, but I wouldn't want to deprive them of what made the series what it is.
Right. That's fair.
Yep.
That's fair. Alrighty. Well, I think that'll probably wrap it up for our conversations on Final Fantasy, SquareSoft, Square Enix, whatever you want to say. Obviously, we focused more on Final Fantasy, but
Yep.
that's because it's a genre very near and dear to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We love you,
we love
Square. We
you.
love you, Final Fantasy. All right, who's the
uh,
best waifu? That's a question that will start Final Fantasy fights right there.
yeah, yeah, that really will. So maybe we'll save that one for our waifu episode.
Ooh.
Um, with that, folks, this has been our 50th,
Oh,
50th
I keep forgetting
episode.
Ian can't hear the air horns.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so this has been our 50th episode, and we thank you for sticking with us for this long and listening to us prattle on mindlessly and endlessly as we do. We've
That's what
obviously
we're
had a
best at.
lot of fun
Oh God, yes.
doing this. We continue to do this and enjoy it. With that, though, what we'd like to tell you is as we round up what we're going to call season one.
We're firing
Uh,
Ian. Wait. Oh, sorry, you didn't get the memo, did you? My bad. He just turns off his camera. All right, no, come back, Ian. You're hired. You're hired. But it's a severe pay cut, which is saying something because I don't pay you for this. So you actually owe me money now.
yes. So
Yeah. Sorry.
we are going to be wrapping. This is going to be our wrap up episode for season one of Non Sequitur Nerds. With that, the nerds are actually going to take a very brief break.
Mhm.
A couple weeks while we work on some new materials, some new designs, maybe actually put a little bit more effort into this
Effort.
going, oh crap, it's noon. Tim, what are we going to talk about today?
Right.
Um, so we are going to take a break, but we will be back in a couple of weeks.
Oh yeah,
This is just an opportunity for us to kind of clean up, clean house, and get ready for season 2 of Non Sequitur Nerds. So,
coming soon to season
uh,
2 of Non Sequitur Nerds. Listen as he and
right.
Tim prattle on about absolutely nothing. Next time on Dragon Ball Z. That should have been our outro
Impulsive.
right there. Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. Click.
I don't know what a Yamcha is, but it sounds disappointing.
So this is it. This is the plateau, huh? It's as good as it gets. Oh man. It's all downhill from here.
Quack.
Oh, the majestic space duck. I like how this just turned into a Team 4-star episode. But yeah, no,
Yes,
like
apparently.
like Ian said, we are going to take a little bit of a break. Um, God, I'm tearing up laughing now. Um, we're replaying things, freshen up a bit, kind of, give ourselves a free weekend for once. I know we've taken a couple breaks over the years, but a good couple of free weekends to kind of plan stuff out and continue bringing you guys the nerddom that you listen to every week. This will also give you a great chance if you've missed any of our prior episodes, go back, catch up. You got some time to catch up on us. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So we will be back. We will post upon our various media streams for when the new episodes will be dropping. We will continue dropping them at the same time, same bat channel.
yep.
But we'll just let you know when the new ones are preparing to come out. So please stay tuned to our social media, and always you can find us on facebook.com/non sequitur nerds, Twitter at non sequitur nerd, twitch.tv /non sequitur nerds,
We really got to start
YouTube.
doing that some more.
Yeah, youtube.com/non sequitur nerds. And of course, obviously, you can find the podcasts themselves on anchor.fm, our hosting platform, who feeds out to Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and several other sites.
That they
So
do. That
we
they do.
look forward to seeing you again within the new year with more news, more up to date information, and more us bitching.
I mean, pretty much. That's pretty much what this whole episode is, or this whole series is an excuse for us to rant about stuff.
Right. I think when we were originally thinking of titles for the show, bitching was in I think most of the titles that we
I
came up
think
with.
it was. I think wasn't it like basement bitching was one of them or something like
Yeah,
that.
I think so. And then that one kind of had like maybe a little bit too like BDSM quality to it. We're like, no,
Yeah,
maybe
let's not do that one.
the safe word is meatloaf.
Well, aw. Well, I think I don't remember what the title was, but like we had finally agreed on one. We're like, this is perfect. This personifies everything that we're about. We go to record the first episode, and as I'm prepping it, I realized that there was some other podcast that had started up like a month before we did, after we'd already agreed on the name. That at the time when I searched, there wasn't any other podcast with that name. We're like, all right, perfect, let's go with it. And then the day we went to go record our first one, we had to actually postpone it, or it was either the day of or a day beforehand. But we had to actually postpone it to come up with a new name because another podcast had started with that name a month before we did. We're like, are you kidding me?
Yep.
So, but we
Yeah.
are the one and only non sequitur nerds,
Yes.
whether
So
you like it or
again,
not.
yeah, that's pretty true. So, thank you again, folks, for joining us. We look forward to speaking with you at you in the new year. So, please stay tuned to our social media, and we will be posting about new episode information soon enough.
Yeah.
But with that, I think that'll do it for us and wrap up season 1 of Non Sequitur Nerds.
I
I don't
want
know
you
if
all
you
to
hit the
know
horn.
I downloaded that sound effect just for this episode.
Yeah, and again, I can't hear it, so I'm just kind of like going off like visual and like, kind of like
Is,
looking at the webcam. Like,
is Tim looking
did he hit
weird?
it?
Crap, that's not a good
Did he hit
indicator.
it? Did he hit it? Yeah, so anyway. All right, everyone. Well, we wish you all a good day, a happy new year, and we look forward to seeing you soon. So, as always, for Non Sequitur Nerds, I'm Ian.
And I'm Tim. Night, everybody.